Patty Loveless finally admits her secret health struggle, and it's heartbreaking. For decades, her voice carried mountain truth into American living rooms, steady and unshaken, a sound rooted in endurance and restraint. She sang of love, loss, and survival with a calm authority that made listeners believe she was untouched by the weight of it all. Her presence felt permanent, like a promise kept. From the outside, her career unfolded with quiet consistency. Records were released, awards were earned, and the voice remained controlled and pure. Yet behind that steadiness lived a daily tension few ever noticed. Every performance required care, every note carried consequence, and every decision demanded restraint. What sounded effortless was protected with discipline, shaped by fear of what could be lost if she pushed too far. Only now, at 67, has Patty finally begun admitting the truth about her health and the toll it took on her life and career, not as a confession meant to shock, but as an honesty long delayed. What was she protecting all those years, and why did she feel she had to endure it alone? Before the world knew her name, Patty Loveless belonged to a place where survival shaped every day. She was born January 4, 1957, in Pikeville, Kentucky, into a coal mining family, where stability was never guaranteed. Life there was not framed by dreams of stardom. It was framed by endurance, by listening for the sound of boots at the door, by learning early that love and hardship often lived side by side. Music did not arrive as ambition, it arrived as relief. Her childhood was marked by movement and uncertainty. The family relocated several times, chasing work and safety, often landing in unfamiliar towns where starting over became routine. Those changes left their mark. Patty learned how to observe, how to listen, how to stay small when needed and strong when required. Singing became her constant. It was something she could carry with her when everything else shifted. In church, in family gatherings, in moments when words failed, her voice became a place she could stand. This was not a romantic beginning. There was no illusion about ease or protection. Country and bluegrass music reflected the lives around her, stories of labor, loss, faith, and perseverance. Patty absorbed those songs not as performance pieces, but as mirrors. They taught her that truth did not need decoration, only honesty. That lesson would follow her for the rest of her life. As a teenager, she moved to Louisville, Kentucky, a transition that widened her world without softening it. She sang wherever opportunity appeared, on local stages, in modest venues, learning discipline long before recognition. Each performance sharpened her awareness of what her voice could do and what it demanded in return. Even then, there was caution. She understood instinctively that a voice was not endless. It had limits, even if no one around her spoke about them. Her early years in Nashville followed the same pattern. She did not arrive as a sensation. She arrived as a worker. There were setbacks, false starts, and long stretches where progress felt distant. Record deals fell through, momentum stalled, yet she stayed. She refined her sound, grounded in tradition, resistant to shortcuts. What she built during that time was not visibility, but resilience. Those years before fame shaped her relationship with music in a way success never could. Singing was not about applause. It was about steadiness. It was about control. It was about surviving long enough to keep telling the truth. She learned how to protect herself emotionally and artistically, often by holding back rather than pushing forward. That instinct, formed early, would later become essential. By the time recognition finally came, Patty Loveless was already carrying a lifetime of discipline inside her voice. The strength audiences heard was earned long before they were listening. Yet even then, something unspoken lingered beneath the surface. If survival had taught her how to endure, what would happen when endurance was no longer enough, and the body began asking for its own protection? By the time fame finally reached Patty Loveless, it did not arrive as a surprise. It arrived as confirmation. Years of restraint, discipline, and patience had prepared her for the moment, even if nothing could fully prepare her for the speed at which everything changed. In the late 1980s, her voice began finding its way onto national airwaves, steady and unmistakable, carrying the weight of lived experience rather than polish. Listeners heard something familiar, a sound that felt rooted rather than manufactured. Her breakthrough did not depend on spectacle, it depended on trust. Songs like Timber, I'm Falling in Love, and Chains introduced a singer who did not chase trends. She stood still while the industry shifted around her, anchored in emotion rather than momentum. That steadiness earned her attention, but it also placed expectations squarely on her shoulders. Suddenly, her voice was no longer just her own. It became a promise to audiences who believed in what she represented. Success multiplied quickly. Albums sold. Tours expanded. Awards followed. Yet fame did not soften the demands placed on her. If anything, it sharpened them. The schedule grew relentless, performances stacked upon one another. Interviews, travel, rehearsals, and recordings filled her days. Each appearance required consistency. Each note carried scrutiny. The discipline she had learned early became her shield. What listeners could not hear was the calculation behind every performance. Patti approached singing with care, aware that pushing too hard carried risk. She learned when to hold back, when to conserve, when to choose precision over power. This was not fear, it was awareness. Her voice was her livelihood, but it was also her identity. Protecting it meant protecting herself. As her career accelerated, so did her responsibility to remain reliable. Country music audiences valued authenticity, and Patti delivered it without compromise. She did not reinvent herself to stay relevant. She deepened her connection to the material, allowing emotion to carry the performance rather than volume or force. That choice set her apart, but it also required restraint that few recognized. Recognition brought validation, but it also narrowed her margin for error. There was little room to falter, little space to rest. Each success raised expectations higher. Behind the scenes, vigilance became routine. The joy of being heard coexisted with the pressure of being depended on. Fame, once imagined as a rival, revealed itself as responsibility. Yet through it all, Patti remained grounded. She did not mistake attention for security. The lessons of her early life stayed close. Survival had taught her that stability could disappear quickly, and she carried that understanding into her career. The applause was real, but it was not permanent. Only discipline endured. As her voice became synonymous with emotional honesty, a quiet truth followed her forward. The very success she had worked so hard to earn would soon test the limits of the instrument that made it possible. And the cost of meeting those expectations was about to reveal itself in ways she could not ignore. As Patti Loveless settled into her place as a bluegrass and country icon, something rare happened. She did not chase the moment came to her. By the early 1990s, her voice had become a reference point, not just for fans but for fellow artists who understood what it meant to honor tradition without becoming trapped by it. She stood at a quiet intersection, carrying the emotional clarity of bluegrass into the broader reach of country music, never diluting either. Her recordings during this period revealed restraint as a form of strength. Albums like Honky Tonk Angel and Mountain Soul were not built for instant impact. They were built to last. Each song felt chosen rather than assembled, shaped by care rather than urgency. She sang about loss, devotion, regret, and endurance with a steadiness that suggested deep familiarity. These were not borrowed emotions. They were lived ones. Recognition followed in meaningful ways. Grammy Awards, critical praise, and lasting respect affirmed that her approach mattered. Yet even as honors accumulated, Patti remained grounded in the work itself. She did not treat success as a finish line. She treated it as responsibility. Her voice was trusted, and she protected that trust fiercely. That meant saying no when necessary, choosing material carefully, and maintaining standards that did not bend easily. Bluegrass, in particular, allowed her to return to the emotional roots that shaped her earliest years. The genre demanded precision, control, and honesty. There was no room to hide behind excess. Every note mattered. Every breath counted. Patty's mastery of this space reinforced her reputation as an artist who valued truth over volume. She did not overpower a song. She carried it. Behind that mastery lived constant awareness. Singing at this level required vigilance. Touring schedules remained demanding. Studio sessions demanded focus and consistency. There was little space for carelessness. While audiences heard confidence, Patty lived with calculation. She knew that longevity depended on restraint. The voice that sounded so sure was guided by discipline shaped over years of survival. Her marriage to producer Emory Gordy Jr., beginning in 1989, provided stability during this demanding period. Their partnership extended beyond personal life into professional understanding. There was shared respect for music as craft, not commodity. That grounding mattered as her career deepened, rather than expanded outward. She was not interested in becoming louder. She was interested in becoming truer. As the years passed, her presence in the industry became less about visibility and more about influence. Younger artists cited her as a standard. Fans returned to her music, not for escape, but for recognition. She had become a voice people trusted to tell the truth without embellishment. Yet even at the height of this respect, something fragile remained beneath the surface. Maintaining this level of integrity required constant self-monitoring. The balance between expression and preservation grew narrower. The same discipline that sustained her career also signaled its limits. And soon the quiet vigilance she carried would demand a more serious reckoning, one that would force her to listen not just to the music, but to her body itself. The reckoning did not arrive suddenly. It arrived through awareness. After years of careful control, Patty Loveless faced the reality that even discipline has limits. In the early 1990s, during a period when her career demanded consistency above all else, she was diagnosed with a vocal cord aneurysm. For a singer whose life depended on precision, the diagnosis carried weight far beyond medicine. It was a warning, one that could not be ignored. A vocal cord aneurysm is not a dramatic illness in public conversation, yet for a vocalist, it is existential. It threatens the very instrument that defines identity, livelihood, and purpose. Surgery became necessary. So did vocal rest. At a moment when momentum encouraged forward motion, her body demanded stillness. The pause was not optional. It was protective. What followed required restraint that audiences never saw. Recovery did not mean return. It meant recalibration. Patty approached singing with even greater care, adjusting technique, conserving strength, and accepting that pushing through carried irreversible risk. Every decision now came with consequence. The fear was not only of silence but of permanent loss. She did not frame this experience as tragedy. She framed it as responsibility. There were no dramatic announcements, no public confessions. Instead, the truth lived quietly in the choices she made. Tours shortened. Appearances became selective. The intensity remained, but it was measured. What listeners heard as control was, in reality, protection. The toll was not only physical. Carrying constant vigilance changes how a person lives inside their work. Singing no longer existed as instinct alone. It required calculation. Each note asked a question. Each performance demanded awareness. That kind of attention can preserve a voice, but it also narrows freedom. The joy of abandon gives way to precision. Expression survives, but it is guided carefully, always aware of the cost. As time passed, health became inseparable from personal life. Patty chose presence over expansion. Her marriage to Emory Gordy Jr. deepened in significance as priorities shifted toward stability and care. When family health needs arose, she did not hesitate. She stepped back, not because she could not continue, but because continuing without limits was no longer honest. For years, Audiences interpreted her reduced visibility as retreat. In truth, it was preservation. The struggle was never hidden through secrecy. It was hidden through dignity. Patty did not owe explanation for protecting her body, yet the silence allowed misunderstanding to grow. What many did not realize was that the hardest work was happening away from the stage. This was the health struggle she would never sensationalize. It was cumulative. It lived in discipline, in restraint, in saying no when saying yes came easily. It lived in choosing longevity over volume, integrity over constant presence. The heartbreak was not in losing her voice. It was in learning how much it required to keep it. Only later would that truth begin to surface, not as revelation, but as reflection. The choices that once seemed quiet would finally be understood for what they were: acts of care, acts of survival, and acts of respect for a gift she refused to waste, even when the cost of protecting it was stepping away from the applause. By the time Patty Loveless reached her later years, the conversation around her absence began to change. What once looked like retreat slowly revealed itself as intention. She did not vanish from music. She narrowed her focus. Select appearances replaced relentless schedules. Purpose replaced pressure. The decision was not framed as an ending, but as an adjustment shaped by experience and honesty. Living with the long memory of vocal injury changes how a singer understands time. Every performance becomes a choice rather than an obligation. Patty embraced that shift. She allowed herself to sing when the moment mattered, not when demand insisted. In doing so, she reclaimed ownership of her voice in a way fame had once complicated. This was not withdrawal, it was preservation. Her later work reflected that clarity. When she returned to bluegrass and roots-based recordings, the sound felt intentional, grounded, and unhurried. There was no urgency to prove relevance. The strength lay in restraint. Each note carried weight because it was chosen. The voice, though tempered, held depth shaped by everything she had endured. What remained was not diminished. It was refined. Outside the studio, her priorities settled firmly around stability and care. Marriage, home life, and quiet continuity replaced constant motion. Supporting her husband through health challenges reinforced the reality that life required presence more than performance. Patty did not dramatize these choices. She lived them. In doing so, she modeled a truth many recognize but few articulate. Survival sometimes means stepping away from what once defined you. At 67, the admission finally surfaced, not as confession, but as reflection. The health struggle she had carried was never a single moment. It was cumulative. It was the understanding that the body remembers every mile, every night, every note. It was accepting that discipline cannot erase consequence, only manage it. Naming that truth required time and safety. Only then could it be spoken. Her honesty reframed her story. The voice that had carried others through heartbreak had also required protection of its own. The silence between appearances was not emptiness. It was care. It was love for a gift that deserved longevity rather than exhaustion. The heartbreak rests not in what she lost, but in what she had to surrender to keep what mattered. Patty Loveless's legacy does not live in volume or visibility. It lives in endurance, in knowing when to hold back, in choosing integrity over applause. Her story resonates because it reflects a universal truth. Strength is not endless. Wisdom is knowing when to listen, even to yourself. As her journey settles into reflection, one question remains, not unanswered, but understood. What does it mean to honor a gift without letting it consume you? For Patty Loveless, the answer was never loud. It was steady, patient, and finally honest. Patty Loveless did not leave the spotlight because her voice failed her. She stepped back because she finally listened to what it was asking of her. After a lifetime of discipline, restraint, and endurance, she chose preservation over expectation. That choice reshapes how her story is heard. The silence between appearances was never absence. It was care. It was respect for a gift earned through hardship and protected through wisdom. Her journey reflects a truth many understand with time. Strength is not proven by how long you push, but by knowing when to stop. Patty's honesty, shared not through headlines but through lived example, offers something lasting. A reminder that survival can be quiet, that legacy can live without constant presence, that honoring what you love sometimes means letting it rest. Her voice still carries truth, even now, because she protected it when it mattered most. For more emotional stories, check out this video.